The call arrived on a Wednesday. Wednesdays are usually my sanctuary, the quiet fulcrum balancing the chaotic energy of Monday's strategic planning and the frenetic execution required for the weekend. I was in my office, perched on the 38th floor, my window a panoramic frame for the sprawling city of Denver. The Rocky Mountains stood as a hazy purple silhouette against a pale, washed-out sky. Below, the city thrummed with a low, consistent energy, a predictable rhythm I found comforting. My desk was an expanse of polished mahogany, utterly clear. My digital life was just as organized, a zero-inbox testament to my efficiency. For a fleeting, perfect moment, my universe was in equilibrium. Then my private line, the one reserved for true emergencies, pierced the silence. I glanced at the caller ID and my stomach tightened. I knew the number. It belonged to Jessica, my brother's wedding planner. She ran a small, chic event firm that I occasionally contracted when my own teams were stretched thin. I'd been the one to recommend her to my mother, a minor act of goodwill that was now curdling into a deep regret. Before we get into the thick of it, I'd love it if you could take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories, and drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Amelia Thorne's office, I answered, my voice steady, betraying none of the apprehension I felt. Amelia, it's Jessica. Oh, thank goodness. I am so sorry to use your direct line. I have a problem, a really big one. Her voice was thin and brittle, trembling on the edge of full-blown panic. I could almost hear the sound of a teacup cracking. In our line of work, planners like Jessica don't panic. They manage. They solve. Panic is a catastrophic liability, the one thing you can't afford. I leaned back into the soft leather of my executive chair, the majestic, indifferent mountains serving as a silent backdrop to her escalating anxiety. "What kind of problem, Jessica?" I asked, keeping my tone gentle. She took a ragged, shaky breath. "It's about Leo and Chloe's wedding. There's been a request." A request from my mother, I presumed. I waited, letting the silence hang. I was intimately familiar with my mother's requests. They were never simple inquiries. They were always masterpieces of emotional manipulation, intricately wrapped in layers of passive aggression, designed to make you feel unreasonable and difficult for not immediately capitulating. "Jessica," I prompted, my voice soft when the silence stretched on for too long. "She called me this morning," Jessica finally blurted, the words tumbling out in a nervous rush. "She said there have been some disagreements, some, family tensions. She said, and please, Amelia, you have to know I'm just relaying what I was told. She said that it would be less stressful for everyone involved if you weren't actually in attendance at the wedding." I didn't respond. I simply sat there, listening to the quiet hum of my computer tower. Outside my window, a lone hawk circled in a lazy arc against the vast, pale sky. Jessica, mistaking my silence for shock, pressed on, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if she were confessing a federal crime. "She asked me to contact the venue directly and have you formally stricken from the guest list." I kept my gaze fixed on the mountains. They were ancient, steadfast, and completely unconcerned. For my entire life, I had been the dependable one, the strong one, the one who quietly fixed everything. I was the steel framework they all built their precarious lives upon. And now they were attempting to remove a foundational load-bearing pillar, naively expecting the entire structure to remain standing. I felt nothing. It was the strangest sensation. There was no surge of anger, no stab of pain, no tremor of shock. It was the feeling you get after a long, grueling fever finally breaks, leaving behind not weakness, but a profound and startling clarity. Jessica was still talking, her professional composure completely gone, rambling now. I told her I couldn't do that, of course. I said it was completely inappropriate and not my place, but she was very insistent. She kept saying it was a family decision, and then she said something else. She paused, and I could practically hear her wince through the phone. She wanted me to confirm that even though you wouldn't be coming, they would still have full access to the funds you had put down for the event. Her exact words were, "We just need to make sure we can keep her $60,000 deposit." And that's when it happened. A small, genuine smile bloomed on my face. It was a calm, steady, knowing smile. The kind of smile you see on a chess master who has just seen the entire board and is about to call checkmate in 3 moves. The sheer audacity of it all was almost breathtaking in its purity. They wanted to delete me from the picture, but keep the expensive frame. They craved the benefits of my existence without the inconvenient presence of my actual person. "I see," I said, my voice as smooth and cool as polished glass. "Jessica, I'm going to need you to do something for me." "Anything," she breathed, the relief in her voice palpable. She was desperate to be helpful, to fix this horribly awkward mess she'd been dragged into. Cancel the entire event. The silence that followed on the other end of the line was absolute, a perfect vacuum. I could picture her in her pretty, floral wallpapered office, her pen frozen mid-air over her notepad. "What?" she finally whispered, the word barely audible. "You heard me," I repeated, my tone unwavering. "Call the venue, call the caterer, call the florist and the band. Cancel everything, effective immediately." But I can't do that," she stammered, her voice regaining a bit of its panicked edge. "You're not the bride. You're not the client of record. My contract is with your brother." I let her protest hang in the air for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. I glanced down at the custom nameplate on my desk. Amelia Thorne, CEO, Thorne Enterprises. For years, they had ribbed me, sometimes gently, sometimes not, for being married to my work, for missing family dinners to close a deal, for choosing balance sheets over backyard barbecues. They had absolutely no clue what I had been methodically building while they were busy living their comfortable lives, largely funded by me. "No, Jessica," I said, my voice soft but unyielding. "I'm not the bride." I let the pause stretch, a quiet, dramatic crescendo. "I'm the owner of the venue, the catering company, and the hotel where all of your guests have booked their rooms. My name is Amelia Thorne, and I'm 35 years old. For most of my life, I had been my family's silent partner, their ghost in the financial machine, their 911 call in every crisis. I wasn't supposed to get that call from Jessica. I was supposed to discover my exile in a quiet, humiliating way. Perhaps when my key card didn't work at the pre-wedding brunch, or when my name simply wasn't on the seating chart, I was supposed to be hurt. I was supposed to absorb the blow, swallow the injustice, and carry on, just as I always had. But for once, fate, or perhaps just simple business logistics, had dialed my number first. To understand why I didn't break down, why there were no tears, you have to understand my designated role in the Thorne family. I wasn't a daughter or a sister in the way most people understand those terms. I was a utility. I was the circuit breaker in the basement of our family home. They only ever thought of me when the lights went out. I was the insurance policy they paid nothing for, but were always relieved to have. I was never the favorite. That title belonged to my brother, Leo. Leo was the golden boy, the effortlessly charming one, the one who could do no wrong, even when almost everything he did was wrong. I, on the other hand, was the fixer, the responsible one, the silent, invisible financier behind every family miracle. It began innocently enough. When we were kids, Leo shattered a neighbor's antique stained glass window with a stray baseball. I remember the look of sheer panic on our mother's face. So I took all my saved-up allowance money, every last coin, and gave it to our dad to help pay for the repair. I just wanted to stop our mother from worrying. When he nearly failed calculus in his junior year of high school, I was the one who spent weeks tutoring him, sacrificing my own studies and sleep to drill formulas into his head until he finally scraped by with a passing grade. They never asked me to do these things. It was simply an unspoken expectation. Amelia will handle it. When I was 23, freshly graduated from business school, and buried under a mountain of student loans, my father was laid off from his job of 30 years. He was a proud man, and the shame of it nearly shattered him. He refused to talk about it, just spending his days sunk into his armchair, staring blankly at a television that wasn't even on. Then the foreclosure notices began to appear, discreetly tucked under a stack of magazines on the coffee table. My mother's soft, muffled sobs became the nightly soundtrack of our house. Leo was away at college, living on campus, blissfully insulated from the crisis. So I handled it. I took on a second job, working grueling night shifts as a cocktail waitress after my full day at an entry-level corporate job. My diet consisted of instant ramen and cheap coffee. Every single dollar I could spare was funneled directly into my parents' bank account. I paid their mortgage month after agonizing month for a full year until my dad finally found new employment. When he did, he just clapped me on the shoulder, a gruff, uncomfortable gesture, and said, "Well, we got through that, didn't we?" Not, "Thank you, Amelia, for saving our home," but, "We got through it," as if we had all been pulling the same weight. I just nodded, the exhaustion too deep for words. A few years later, my mother decided she absolutely needed to remodel her kitchen. It was her ultimate dream. A massive marble island, professional-grade stainless steel appliances, a deep farmhouse sink. She'd show me pictures torn from architectural magazines with a wistful, theatrical sigh. Leo, who was now working a commission-only sales job with a wildly unpredictable income, just shrugged. "Looks expensive, Mom." So I covered half of it. I wrote her a check for $30,000. I told her it was an early birthday gift. She was ecstatic, hugging me tightly. She spent the next few months obsessively overseeing the construction. When it was finally finished, she hosted a small party for her friends. I stood in the back of the room, sipping a glass of water, listening as she gave the grand tour. "We decided it was finally time to treat ourselves," she announced, beaming with pride. "It was time we invested in our home." There was that word again, we. I was the silent, invisible partner in all their accomplishments, the silent we that made it all possible. The biggest incident before the wedding fiasco was the ring. Leo met Chloe 2 years ago. She was beautiful, ambitious, and deeply impressed by the image of the Thorne family that Leo so carefully projected. An image that, unbeknownst to her, I had been bankrolling for over a decade. When he decided to propose, he picked out a ring with a perfectly respectable 1-carat diamond. But Chloe had made it abundantly clear in 100 subtle and not-so-subtle ways that she envisioned something grander. I saw the look on her face when he showed her pictures of what he could realistically afford. It was a mask of polite but unmistakable disappointment. So, I stepped in. We were at the jeweler's, a private appointment Leo had arranged. He kept glancing nervously from the 1-carat diamond he could just barely afford to the dazzling 2-carat one that Chloe couldn't take her eyes off. The price difference was $15,000. He looked at me, a helpless, pleading expression in his eyes. It was the same look he had been giving me his entire life. The look that said, "Fix it, Amelia." I had a discreet word with the jeweler. I put the difference on my personal credit card. The relief that washed over Leo was immediate and overwhelming. He hugged me, whispering, "You're the best, Amelia. I owe you one." Chloe was over the moon, immediately snapping pictures of the massive ring on her finger. They walked out of the store hand in hand, already excitedly discussing how to announce their engagement on social media, leaving me behind to sign the final credit card slip. They didn't just forget me. They didn't even notice I wasn't there anymore. They thanked me with silence, with casual omissions, with family photos I was never in because I was always the one holding the camera. I wasn't a person to them. I was a resource, a safety net woven from my own hard work, long hours, and loneliness. And that's why the wedding planner's call didn't break me. It was simply the final, itemized invoice for a lifetime of services rendered. This time they weren't just forgetting me or overlooking me. They were actively, consciously, and formally erasing me. And in doing so, they had forgotten the most important rule of business. Never ever disrespect your primary investor. The real seed of it all, the moment the final irreparable crack in the foundation appeared, was 3 months before that fateful call from Jessica. It happened at a Sunday brunch. My mother had insisted on hosting one to celebrate Leo and Chloe's engagement. It was a perfect spring day, and the new kitchen I had largely paid for was gleaming. Sunlight streamed through the large bay window, illuminating the tiny dust motes dancing in the air. The comforting aroma of fresh coffee and my mother's famous cinnamon rolls filled the house. On the surface, it was a flawless portrait of a happy family celebrating a joyous occasion. I, of course, had arrived early to help. I arranged the fresh flowers, set out the good china, and brewed the coffee. I always came early. It was far easier to be useful than to try and force my way into their effortless small talk. Leo and Chloe arrived last, as always, glowing and inseparable. He was sporting a new luxury watch I'd bought him for his birthday. She was wearing the upgraded ring I'd paid for. They were a perfect picture, and I was the invisible artist who had painted it. The brunch was a loud, cheerful affair. Aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the house, all fawning over Chloe and congratulating Leo. I slipped into my usual role. I refilled wine glasses. I cleared dirty plates. I smiled and nodded, answering the predictable questions about my work with polite, brief responses. Yes, business is great. No, I'm not seeing anyone special right now, just incredibly busy. I was in the dining room gathering some empty dessert plates when I heard their voices. They were in the kitchen, just through the swinging door. They must have thought I was out on the back patio with everyone else. Their voices were low, but there was a momentary lull in the party's chatter, and their words carried, as clear and sharp as shattered glass. It was Chloe who spoke first, her voice light and conspiratorial. "The guest list is getting so long. We really have to make some cuts. What about Amelia? I mean, she's not really going to come, is she?" There was a short, pregnant pause. I froze, my hand hovering over a half-eaten slice of quiche. "I mean," Chloe continued with a slight, dismissive laugh, "she's always so serious. She'd probably just sit in a corner and check her work emails the whole time. It's not really her scene, you know?" I waited. I held my breath, waiting for my mother to defend me. To say, "Don't be ridiculous. Of course she's coming. She's Leo's sister. I waited for the display of loyalty that is supposed to be the very bedrock of a family. Instead, my mother replied, her voice cool and pragmatic, completely matter-of-fact. "Oh, she's not coming. We'll send her an invitation, obviously for appearances, but she won't actually be there." Then she delivered the words that would echo in my mind for the next 3 months. "Don't you worry about it. This is Leo's special day. She knows her role. She's just the wallet." She's just the wallet. The words didn't land like a slap in the face. They landed like a clinical diagnosis, a cold, detached confirmation of a disease I had long suspected I had. It wasn't anger I felt in that precise moment. It was a profound, chilling clarity. The air around me seemed to thin. The cheerful noise from the patio faded into a distant, muffled buzz. It felt as if I were at the bottom of a deep swimming pool, looking up at the distorted, wavering shapes of the world above. They weren't being evil. They weren't even trying to be cruel. In their minds, they were simply being practical. They had categorized me. My function was to provide the funds, not to participate in the joy those funds created. I was a means to an end. The scaffolding around the beautiful building of their lives, absolutely necessary for construction, but always intended to be dismantled and removed before the grand opening. I stood there for a long second, my heart beating a slow, steady, funereal rhythm. Then I picked up the plate. I pushed open the door and walked into the kitchen. A polite, practiced smile was fixed on my face. Chloe and my mother looked up, their conversation stopping abruptly. They looked a little startled to see me, but not guilty. "Just clearing some of these away," I said, my voice sounding unnervingly normal even to my own ears. "Oh, Amelia, you don't have to do that," my mother said, already recovering her composure. "You're a guest today." I looked at her, then at my future sister-in-law, and I smiled. It was the greatest performance of my career. It's no trouble at all. I spent the rest of the afternoon flawlessly playing my part. I laughed at my uncle's terrible jokes. I asked Chloe about her dress fittings. I even helped clean up the kitchen after everyone else had gone home. But something deep inside me had fundamentally and irrevocably shifted. It wasn't a crack. It wasn't a wound. It was a clean, surgical break. The part of me that had spent a lifetime desperately trying to earn their love, the part that kept writing checks in the faint hope that one day they would see me and not just my bank account, had quietly and peacefully died in that sun-drenched kitchen. I was no longer a participant in my family. I was an observer, and I was waiting. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I knew it was coming. A final bill. One last transaction. The brunch was the moment I emotionally divested. The phone call from Jessica 3 months later was just the final paperwork. The moment I disconnected the call with Jessica, the silence in my office was absolute. There was no internal storm, no surge of adrenaline, no primal urge to scream or hurl my expensive lamp against the wall. There was only a profound and complete stillness. The decision had already been made 3 months prior, in my mother's kitchen, surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and betrayal. This was merely the execution. I swiveled in my chair to face my dual monitors. My fingers moved across the keyboard with a calm, deliberate precision. I didn't have to search for the files. I knew exactly where every digital document was. For years, my family had teased me for being so meticulous, for being married to my work. They saw my business acumen as a personality flaw, a sad substitute for a real life. They had no idea that the very skills they mocked were about to systematically dismantle the fantasy world they had constructed on a foundation of my silence. I opened the first folder, labeled LC Wedding. Inside was a neat, alphabetized collection of PDFs. First, the venue contract. The Azure Hall, my flagship event space. I opened the file. I remembered the day Leo and Chloe had toured it. "Amelia, it's an absolute dream," Chloe had gushed, "but there's no way we could ever afford it." Leo had looked at me with those familiar, helpless eyes. "I'll handle it," I had said. I hadn't just paid the deposit. I had waived the entire venue fee, a gift valued at over $100,000. I scrolled down to the signature page. The primary contract was between the Azure Hall LLC and the event planner, Jessica. But in the financial addendum, where the payment schedule was outlined, was a specific clause my legal team had drafted for situations just like this. All financial guarantees and event authorizations are subject to the final, binding approval of the primary financier, Amelia Thorne. My name, in black and white. Next, the catering agreement. Thorne Gastronomy, my high-end culinary division. I remembered the tasting session vividly. Chloe had complained about the cost per head for the filet mignon. My mother had looked at me, a single expectant eyebrow arched in my direction. I had covered the entire invoice, in full, in advance. Another gift. I opened the file. There it was again, buried in the fine print they had never bothered to read. Event fulfillment is contingent upon the final authorization of Amelia Thorne. Then, the hotel block, the Sterling Hotel, Denver, another one of my properties. I had reserved 50 rooms at a heavily discounted rate for their out-of-town guests, a logistical nightmare no one else had wanted to deal with. I pulled up the master reservation file. There, at the top of the group booking, was the authorization code, my code. Security services, floral vendor partnerships, the luxury transportation company for the guest shuttles. I went through them, one by one. My name, my company, my authorization. For years I had built my empire quietly, methodically, while they saw me as their dowdy, work-obsessed spinster sister. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. It tasted like freedom. I owned every single pillar of the perfect day they had planned, the very day they had unceremoniously uninvited me from. I opened a new email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, and then I began to type. To Jessica@chicevents.com. CC. Accounting at Thorne Enterprises. Com. Legal@thorneenterprises.com. Venue manager at the AzureHall.com. Catering sales at thornegastronomy.com. Reservations at thesterlingdenver.com. Subject: event cancellation. Full authority confirmed. Wedding of Leo Thorne and Chloe Price. The body of the email was just as clinically simple. Jessica, per our teleconference, please proceed with the immediate and full cancellation of all services, contracts, and reservations related to the Thorne Price Wedding event number 815B. All deposits are to be forfeited as per the client's breach of the primary financier's guest agreement clause. My authorization is attached for your records. Regards, Amelia Thorne, CEO, Thorne Enterprises. I attached the scanned copies of the contracts, my cursor highlighting the clauses where my name appeared. I read the email over one last time. It was cold. It was clinical. It was perfect. My finger moved to the mouse, the cursor hovering over the send button. This was it, the point of no return. The end of a lifetime of being the quiet, dependable foundation they walked all over. I wasn't just canceling a party. I was foreclosing on a relationship. I was firing my family from the job of being my family. I clicked, and in the profound silence of my office, 38 floors above the city, I felt the first true, deep exhale of my entire adult life. The first tremor hit my phone at precisely 5:47 p.m. It wasn't a call, but a single, insistent text message that buzzed against the polished surface of my mahogany desk. It was from my mother. "Mom, the venue just called me. They said the wedding is canceled. There has to be some kind of mistake. Call them back and fix it." I stared at the message, at the implicit, lifelong command contained in those two words, "Fix it." The phrase that had defined my entire relationship with them. I placed my phone face down on the desk and took a slow sip of the Earl Grey tea I had just brewed. The citrusy scent of bergamot filled my quiet office, a small, civilized pleasure. The second text arrived 10 minutes later. This one was from Leo. "Leo, what the hell is going on? The caterer just backed out. Chloe is freaking out. Fix it." There it was again, that command. Not, "What happened?" Not, "Do you know anything about this?" Just the immediate baked-in assumption that a problem had materialized and that it was, by default, my job to solve it. I picked up my phone, calmly swiped the screen, and enabled the Do Not Disturb function. The screen went dark, but the chaos they had sown couldn't be contained by a simple phone setting. It immediately began to spill over into the one digital space where they all communicated, the family group chat. An amusing oversight, I was sure, that they hadn't removed me from it yet. My phone, though silenced, still pushed the notifications to my laptop screen. It was like watching a theatrical farce unfold from the comfort of a private box seat. "Aunt Carol, is it true about the wedding? Susan from next door just called, said her reservation at the Sterling was canceled out of the blue." "Mom, it's a technical error, some kind of system glitch. I'm trying to get a hold of Amelia to sort it out, but she isn't answering her phone." Chloe, "A glitch? The entire wedding is gone. The planner won't answer my calls. The venue hung up on me. This is an absolute nightmare." Leo, "Everyone calm down. I'm sure Amelia will handle it as soon as Mom gets a hold of her. It's probably just a payment issue or something." A payment issue. They were so close to the truth, yet so profoundly far away. They understood the world exclusively through the lens of money, but they couldn't possibly fathom that the money had finally developed a will of its own. I watched, mesmerized, as they spun their frantic theories. They blamed Jessica, the planner, for incompetence. They blamed the bank for a clerical error. They even floated the idea of a computer virus. For a full, chaotic hour, they scrambled, a flurry of panicked messages and misplaced exclamation points, desperately trying to find a scapegoat for the disaster that had suddenly befallen them. Not once did a single person in that chat suggest the truth. Not once did anyone type, "Hey, maybe this has something to do with the fact that we just kicked the person paying for everything off the guest list." Their collective self-awareness was a perfect, astounding vacuum. By the time the sun began to set, painting the Denver sky in strokes of orange and purple, my office was dark, save for the cool glow of my monitor. The messages in the group chat had grown more frantic, more desperate. "Chloe, Leo, your sister is doing this on purpose. This has to be her idea of some sick, twisted joke." "Mom, don't be ridiculous, Chloe. Amelia would never do this. She can be difficult, but she's not cruel. This is a mistake. Amelia, if you are seeing these messages, you need to call me immediately. You are embarrassing this family." Embarrassing the family. That was her primary concern. Not that her son's lavish wedding was in ruins. Not that her daughter was clearly at the epicenter of the catastrophe, but that the neighbors, the friends, the distant relatives might find out and gossip. I minimized the chat window. I had seen enough. They wanted me to be invisible. a silent benefactor whose only role was to sign checks. They had finally gotten their wish. I was completely invisible. And in my absence, the world I had so carefully constructed for them, the world they had so carelessly taken for granted, was simply ceasing to exist. They had removed me from the guest list, a simple, cruel little act of social housekeeping. But in their arrogance, they had forgotten one small, crucial detail. They forgot who held the master keys to the entire building. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I'd slept a full 8 hours, a deep, uninterrupted slumber that had been a stranger to me for more than a decade. There was no familiar jolt of anxiety in my chest, no immediate mental checklist of other people's problems to solve. There was only quiet. I made myself coffee, the rich, dark aroma filling my apartment as the first faint hints of dawn began to soften the sharp edges of the city skyline. I sat on my sofa, wrapped in a soft cashmere blanket, and simply watched the day begin. It felt like the very first day of a new life. My phone, which I had left charging in the kitchen, was a silent black rectangle. I felt no compulsion to look at it. I knew what was waiting for me: a digital avalanche of anger, guilt-tripping, and demands. For the first time, I felt zero obligation to dig anyone out. The first call came at exactly 7 a.m. The screen on the kitchen counter lit up with Leo's face. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. I let it ring. On the third consecutive try, I watched it go to voicemail again. Then I walked over, picked up the phone, and muted the ringer. The ensuing silence was beautiful. For years, my words had meant nothing. My objections were dismissed as me being difficult. My suggestions were ignored. My pleas to be seen, to be valued as more than a solution, were met with blank, uncomprehending stares. I had argued, explained, and negotiated my way through every family crisis, and all it had ever gotten me was the same starring role in the next drama. I had spent decades using my voice, and it had failed me. So now, I would use my silence. I spent the day working from home. I answered emails from my international partners, reviewed quarterly reports, and held 2 lengthy video conferences. My business, the thing they all privately viewed as a sad consolation prize for a life without a husband and children, ran with its usual quiet, relentless efficiency. It was my sanctuary, a world where logic reigned, where contracts were honored, and where my value was never in question. Around noon, Leo started calling again, and again, and again, 6 times in a row. His desperation was a palpable force, vibrating through the silenced phone. He was a child who had deliberately broken his favorite toy and was now running, crying, to the only person who had ever known how to fix things. On the 7th call, something made me pick up. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe it was the need for one final, definitive period at the end of a very long, exhausting sentence. "Hello, Leo," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "Amelia, oh my God, finally!" He sounded breathless, a chaotic mix of fury and relief. "What are you doing? You have to stop this. You have to call everyone back. You're ruining everything." I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window in my living room, watching a lone sailboat glide across the choppy, gray water of the reservoir. "I'm not doing anything, Leo," I replied. "I just stopped doing everything." "What is that even supposed to mean?" he demanded, his voice rising in pitch. "This is our wedding. Chloe is a complete mess. My mom can't stop crying. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you're deliberately destroying it. Don't you even care?" I thought about his question. Did I care? I cared that my brother was a man who had stood by silently while his fiancée and his mother conspired to erase his own sister. I cared that the foundation of his happiness was built entirely on my sacrifices. I cared that after a lifetime of service, I was worth less to him than a seating chart. "This wedding means so much to us," he pleaded, his anger softening into a familiar, pathetic whine. I kept my eyes on the distant mountains, solid and unyielding, a reflection of the life I had built for myself. "No, Leo," I said, and my voice was not angry or bitter, just clear and true. "You mean my money means so much to you?" The line went completely quiet. He had no answer for that. The truth was a solid brick wall he couldn't climb over or break down. It just stood there, immovable and absolute. "Please," he finally whispered, the fight gone from his voice. "Just fix it. I'll talk to Mom and Chloe. We'll make it right. We'll put you back on the list." The offer was so small, so pathetic. A concession he clearly believed was a grand, magnanimous gesture. "We'll allow you the privilege of attending the event you're paying for." It was far too late for that. The list didn't matter anymore. "Goodbye, Leo," I said, and I disconnected the call. He tried to call back twice more, but I didn't answer. I walked over to my desk and put the phone away in a drawer. They wanted me to be invisible. Fine. I would give them exactly what they wanted. I would let them see what true invisibility looked like. Let them stand in the echoing silence of the space I used to occupy. Let them finally see what happens when the woman who funded their entire world simply vanishes. Silence wasn't just the absence of noise. It was a presence. It was a weapon. And for the first time in my life, it was all mine. The wedding was supposed to be on a Saturday. I knew this because for the past year, my credit card statements had served as a constant, itemized reminder of the date. Saturday arrived, and with it a perfect autumn sky, crisp and brilliantly, painfully blue. It was the kind of day photographers dream of for a wedding. I did not go to a spa. I did not jet off to Paris on a whim. I did not wallow in sadness or pop a bottle of celebratory champagne. I did what I always do on a Saturday. I went for a long, punishing run along the High Line Canal Trail, then came home and started work on a new business proposal for an expansion into Asia. My life did not require a grand gesture of defiance. The defiance was in the simple, uninterrupted continuation of my own life. My intelligence on the situation came in quiet, professional updates. I wasn't lurking in the shadows or stalking their social media. My own senior staff were keeping me informed. They were, after all, my eyes and ears on the ground at my own properties. The first update came at 11 a.m. from Mark, the general manager of the Sterling Hotel. His text was discreet and to the point. "Ms. Thorne, just to keep you apprised, approximately 30 guests from the cancelled Thorne Price block have arrived for check-in over the past hour. They are displeased. Your mother is currently at the front desk demanding we honor the original reservation. Our staff is handling it with professional courtesy, explaining that the entire event reservation was cancelled by the organizer of record." I could picture the scene perfectly. My mother, her face a mask of furious indignation, trying to leverage a family connection that she herself had deliberately severed. I could hear her saying, "But my daughter owns this hotel," without a single trace of irony. My staff, loyal to the CEO who signed their paychecks, not the CEO's estranged mother, would just offer polite corporate smiles and well-rehearsed apologies. The second update came at 3:30 p.m. from Maria, the events director at the Azure Hall. "Miss Thorne, as expected, guests have begun arriving at the ballroom. We have a sign posted indicating a private event cancellation. Your brother and Ms. Price arrived a few minutes ago. He appears to be making frantic phone calls on the steps. I closed my eyes. I could see him. Leo in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, standing helpless on the grand marble steps of the venue he couldn't enter. Chloe beside him, her beautiful, expensive makeup surely starting to streak with tears of pure frustration and rage. The perfect day, the perfect backdrop, all locked away behind doors that I owned. All those people, the aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends, standing around awkwardly on the sidewalk, looking at the closed doors, whispering amongst themselves. The public humiliation they had tried so hard to spare themselves by excluding me was now unfolding on the grandest, most public scale imaginable. The final and most telling update came just after 5 p.m., again from Mark at the hotel. Ms. Thorne, for your situational awareness, the family has commandeered a section of the lobby bar. The general mood is volatile. The blame is currently being assigned to the wedding planner, with some secondary blame being placed on incompetent hotel management. Your name has not been mentioned directly, but the subtext is heavy. Of course, it was everyone's fault but their own. They would blame the vendors, the staff, the world. They would rewrite the story in their heads until they were the blameless victims of a terrible, inexplicable misfortune. They would never, ever look at the empty chair where I was supposed to be and understand that the entire catastrophe was born from that one simple act of erasure. I read the text, took a deep breath, and archived the message. I had not laid a single finger on their perfect day. I had not screamed or fought or made a scene. I had done nothing at all. I had simply stepped away. I had withdrawn my support, my money, my time, my energy, my presence, and their entire world had collapsed like a house of cards. I had just been the table it was built on. All I had to do was walk away. I spent the rest of the evening in quiet solitude, ordering in my favorite Thai food and watching an old black and white film noir. The city lights twinkled outside my window, a galaxy of strangers. Somewhere, across town, a family was in ruins. A wedding was a disaster. But in my apartment, for the first time in a very, very long time, there was peace. 2 days later, on a cold and rainy Monday evening, the knock came. It wasn't the hesitant tap of a delivery person or the confident rap of a friend. It was a heavy, reluctant sound, the sound of someone who did not want to be there. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. I opened the door. Leo stood there, looking smaller and more diminished than I had ever seen him. His expensive wool coat was damp with rain, his usually perfect hair was a mess, and the dark circles under his eyes told a story of sleepless, stressful nights. The golden boy charm was gone, completely stripped away, leaving behind a tired, defeated man. For a fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of the old instinct, the deeply ingrained urge to fix it, to smooth it over, to make it better. I quickly and firmly extinguished it. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I stepped aside, leaving the door open for him, but not explicitly inviting him further. He walked into the foyer, dripping rainwater onto the polished hardwood floor. He looked around my apartment, his eyes wide as he took in the floor-to-ceiling windows, showing the glittering, rain-slicked city. He was seeing my world, the one I had built, for the very first time. "You made your point," he said, breaking the silence. He wasn't looking at me, but at a large, abstract painting on the wall. "You've humiliated us. Are you happy now?" The accusation that I had done all this out of spite, that my ultimate goal was to cause him pain, hung in the air between us. He still didn't get it. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms over my chest. "No, Leo, You humiliated me for years. I just canceled my funding." My words were quiet, devoid of anger. I stated it like a simple fact, a basic business transaction. The finality in my tone seemed to startle him. He finally turned to look at me, and I saw the raw desperation in his eyes. "It was Mom," he said, his voice dropping. "You know how she gets. She gets these ideas in her head. Chloe was just going along with it. I was going to talk to them, to fix it." It was the oldest excuse in his arsenal, the one he had been using since we were children. "You know how Mom is." It was his shield, the lifelong justification for his own spinelessness. He would let our mother run rampant, hurting people, and then he would swoop in afterward, playing the helpless, well-meaning peacemaker. A soft, mirthless laugh escaped my lips. "And you've used that exact excuse for 30 years, Leo. You've hidden behind her. You let her say it. You let Chloe agree to it. And you did nothing. Your silence was your vote. You were never going to fix it. You just got caught." He flinched, as if I'd physically slapped him. The truth, when spoken so plainly, has a physical force. He looked small and lost, standing in my spacious foyer. All the blame and anger had drained out of him, leaving behind a hollow, bewildered confusion. "So this is it, then? This is just revenge? For one mistake?" I pushed myself off the doorframe and walked slowly toward him. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel pity. I felt a strange, sad sense of closure. I was looking at my brother, but all I saw was a stranger I had spent my entire life trying to please. It wasn't one mistake, Leo. It was the last mistake in a lifetime of them. "And no," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "this isn't revenge." I stopped directly in front of him and looked him straight in the eye. "This is balance." I held his gaze for a long moment, letting the words settle in the space between us. Then I turned, walked to the door, and held it open for him. He understood. There were no more arguments to be made, no more deals to be struck. The account was closed, the balance sheet zeroed out. He walked past me without another word, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched him go down the long, empty hall toward the elevator. Then I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it softly, the latch clicking into place with a quiet, final sound. The sound of an ending. The week after Leo's visit was quiet. The angry texts had ceased. The panicked voicemails were a thing of the past. The silence I had deployed as a weapon had transformed into a warm, protective blanket of peace. In that quiet, I found the mental space to think, not about what had been destroyed, but about what I wanted to build next. My first order of business was the ring. The 2-carat, $60,000 diamond I had upgraded for Chloe. The purchase had been made on my business account, and the insurance policy was still in my name. It was legally and financially mine. It was a loose end, a final glittering symbol of my old life that needed to be tied up. I made an appointment with the same private jeweler. When I walked in, he greeted me with a knowing, professionally sympathetic look. I placed the ring on the black velvet tray between us. "I'd like to have this resized," I said. He looked surprised. "Of course. For whom, may I ask?" "For me," I said simply. "For my right hand." He just nodded, a slight smile touching his lips, and got to work. An hour later, I walked out of the store with the diamond sparkling on my right ring finger. It didn't feel strange or petty. It felt right. It wasn't a trophy of my victory over them. It was a tangible reminder to myself, a symbol of ownership, a silent vow that I was done funding people who erased me. From now on, any investment I made would be in myself. That evening, an email from my events director, Maria, popped into my inbox. Subject: opening at the Azure Hall. Ms. Thorne, just a reminder that the ballroom is now open on the date of the canceled Thorne Price event. We've had several inquiries, but I wanted to check if you had any specific plans for the venue before we release the date. I stared at the email. The ballroom, a magnificent empty space that was supposed to have hosted a celebration for a family that had broken my heart. The thought of letting some other bride have her perfect day there felt wrong. That space was now part of my story. It was a void, yes, but it was my void, and I could fill it with whatever I wanted. An idea began to form, a tiny spark that quickly grew into a flame. What if I hosted my own event? Not a wedding, not a pity party, a celebration. I picked up the phone and called Maria. "Don't release the date," I said, my voice filled with a new energy. "I have a new event for you to plan. Book the ballroom, for me." "Of course, Miss Thorne. What's the occasion?" I looked at the brilliant ring sparkling on my right hand. I thought about the silent, thankless work of women everywhere. The women who pay the mortgages, who tutor their siblings, who upgrade the rings, who clear the plates at brunch. The women who are told their role is to be the wallet. "It's a gala," I said, the idea taking full shape as I spoke. "And the theme is reclaim, rebuild, rise."